So, hi everyone. For those of you who haven't been here before, my name is Cameron Turner. I'm the entrepreneur in residence at the University of Queensland Business School, and we've been running this series for the last few months called Thriving Through the Decade of Disruption. And really, what we're trying to do in this series is talk to people who are innovating, people who are disrupting. Not so much people that are getting disrupted, but people who are doing the disrupting. Really around that the process of how do you get a new idea into a marketplace. We've talked about lots of different, from alternative meats and plant-based meats through to engineering technologies, microbiome technologies, blockchain technologies. So, and I guess part of my role at the University of Queensland is working with researchers and academics who have really cool ideas. But what I'm really passionate about is actually trying to work out how to get those ideas into the marketplace. So if you see some strange people walking in the background, I'm up here in Townsville, enjoying a lovely winter. And in some ways, I guess, what I'm really glad about today is having Paul Sernia. So Paul and I used to work together at UniQuest. We both were involved in commercialising technology at the University of Queensland. And Paul's been working really hard with a startup company that he helped to form or founded around electrical vehicle charging. And he's going to talk a lot more specifically about that. But what I'm really interested in to unpack with Paul is how do you take a new idea, a new business model, and establish it into a new market? Because we talk about product market fit. And if there's a new market that's small, but we know it's going to be big, how does a small startup, which might start small, how does it accelerate itself into a what is a fast growing, rapidly changing market? And so Paul, tell us a little bit about Tritium, about your company, and a little bit about the background. But I guess the first question I wanted, after you've done that, I want you to lead off with is just some of your early thoughts about the ambitions of what Tritium is, and where do you see yourself fitting in this landscape of this electric vehicle market, which is enormous. Well, it's not enormous, but it's going to be enormous.
Yeah. Really.
And how do you see that working from a startup point of view of actually getting into that market?
Yeah, sure. So, I guess just about Tritium first. Tritium's a technology company, specializing in design and manufacture of charging stations for electric vehicles. So we, in terms of the technology we develop, it's both hardware and software. And, we have a very strong element of manufacturing as well. We've grown that company to now be a global player in terms of what we call fast charging, which is really charging of commercial passenger electric vehicles that is designed to be in the public domain, and sort of 20 minutes or less type of charging speeds versus much slower charges, which could take up to hours. So that's where we play. I think to your question, in very early on, I co-founded the company, almost 20 years ago now. And even back then, we were really quite passionate and interested in renewables and, battery technology and vehicles and bringing that all together. And so, even as undergraduate students at university, we could see where this technology was leading the market. It made sense to us. We thought it was the way of the future. But the challenge is that, for me, I was always left wondering why isn't anybody doing this? Why hasn't this happened yet? It seems so obvious. What is going on here that's preventing this from happening? And so, I think that was one of the undercurrents in terms of our, my thought processes around electric vehicles and the industry. And, I think it was as simple as, I wanted to be involved in that. It seemed like the right way to go. My interest in renewable and technology and all, it brought all of those things together. I think, and so electric vehicle charging wasn't really, that market didn't exist back then. What we were doing was working on, drivetrains, so building electronics for driving electric vehicles. So, back then, you couldn't buy an electric vehicle, you had to build your own. So people would get high efficiency motors, and they'd put some battery packs together, and then they would need special electronics to control that system. And that's where we came in. We developed, a product that could do that very well. And really, you talk about product market fit. So if you think about, the history of the company split into 2 decades, the first decade was really around searching for that product market fit. And, and one of the reasons was because electric vehicle charging, wasn't a thing. It wasn't actually an option available to us back then. And, we'd always had ambitions to get our technology into electric vehicles. That's what we were about. And that was a very difficult, anyone who's even vaguely familiar with the automotive supply chain knows that to get into that is a 3 to 5 year process. You need to be quite a big company, there's a lot of overhead involved in supplying to the automotive companies. And so, really when, as we face barriers, trying to get into that market, we'd fall back on more specialty projects that perhaps were smaller scale, were looking for more advanced technology, were a bit more experimental. And so, that's, we got involved with those types of projects for quite a long time. And it wasn't just vehicles, it was submarines, it was, UAVs flying, at 30,000 feet. It was a whole host of different applications, all built around, this idea of using renewable energy and lithium battery storage and, high efficiency electronics, operating at high powers that could really, deliver something unique. And that was really, the technology base for us. And so then I think, that was, I guess, 10 years of product market fit, give or take. And so we were always alert to the electric vehicle industry, and we started to see, around 2010, 2011, we really started to see some noises from the commercial sector that perhaps they were starting to take this a bit more seriously. And what I thought they should have been doing 15 years ago, they were starting to talk about doing now. And so there were, a culmination of different things that led us to the market that we're in now. So, we were seeing the right signals from the market. We were seeing other companies establishing themselves and trying to operate businesses around this industry. And we also had customers coming to us looking, we knew people were searching for charging solutions. And, we had one customer in particular that came to us, and they understood what was out there, and they knew that they needed something more advanced and better if they were going to succeed. And they knew our technology was potentially a good fit in our team. And so, they were really the first customer that really seeded it for us. And, we've been focusing on that ever since, and been lucky enough to be quite successful at it.
Yeah, that's awesome, Paul. And what I love about that is because we're talking about, disruptive tech, transformational technology, and this product market, this search for product market fit, and almost problem solution fit precedes product market fit. What is the problem? And once we understand that problem, what is the solution? And quite often what happens, and I used to get really frustrated with researchers who are just focused on solution, and they're just building solutions. They actually don't know what the problem is. But and one of the I guess the luxuries that you and I had working with these researchers is just occasionally, and it doesn't happen as often as we'd like it to, but occasionally you stumble across a problem, and you've already got this solution that you think actually that just fits, and that's when problem solution fit crystallizes, and then you've got to move into product market fit. And that sounds sort of like it took you a long time to get there, but in an industry that actually doesn't exist, then it has to. But obviously that first 10 years, without that first 10 years, you would have had nothing, I guess, to actually then exploit that opportunity when it did finally present. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, that's right. So it was really a matter of, we developed some good technology. We were selling it into specialized electric vehicles. It had particular properties around its efficiency, its size, its weight, what it was doing. the performance. And we refine that as, with each new customer, their problems, they'd always have a slightly different problem. And so, it forced us to iterate on our technology and develop, add to that technology stack as well. And so, really we were, I think the switch here is that we had very good technology for driving electric vehicles, which nobody wanted, but realized that we could repurpose that to be, in a stationary application for actually charging those vehicles. And that's, as you say, we were lucky that our technology readiness and our experience came at the same time that the market was open to entry for somebody like us. And, we just, all of those, the stars aligned.
Yeah, that's great. And in some ways, I think, like is famously said, luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you'd spend all this time preparing. And I think what I really love about this is this journey between in search for product market fit. So you'd obviously discovered problem solution fit and product market fit, but it wasn't enormous. It wasn't setting the world on fire. It wasn't exploding. People weren't beating your door down to get access to this. But as you're going through that journey, and that's again what a really key point here is that as you're on that journey, you're continually discovering new problems. And if you're lucky, there's a bit of luck there and a bit of timing. You eventually, if you're lucky and you've got good preparation, you stumble across a problem and you think, heck, this is a game changer. Our solution could actually be a game changer in this problem area. And then it's like what Jim Calacrina says, an angel investor that invested in a number of my companies says, it's like you step on a landmine and things just start happening. Everything just takes off. And that sounds like what happened when that first customer came to you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. And I think what people don't realize is you don't have any appreciation of what the destination is or the timing for when that will happen. And so you're almost in this, constant sort of trudge. You just keep searching, you keep doing things, and that landmine, you haven't hit it yet. Sometimes you never hit it. And so I think, I count myself pretty fortunate that sort of the confluence of events, worked in our favor.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think essentially so there's a real delicate, and so talk to me a little bit about the journey in that first 10 years, because we often talk about pivot or persevere. At what point do you give up and say, okay, we're selling a bit, but this is not setting the world on fire. I can't afford the Ferrari. I had great ideas about how this is and it's just hard work. It's just trudgery. And should we pivot? And in some senses, tell us about, over that first 10 years, and I know you were in and out of other jobs and, you eventually decided to jump into the company, but tell us about some of those points where you actually thought, were there times where you thought, actually, this is just too hard. We should just pack up and go home. And how did you get past that? How did you get through that?
Probably stupidity, more than anything else. I think there are lots and lots of times where you question what you're doing, and there's no answers. Really, there's no answers. And I think we always felt like we wanted to build something big. We felt, it just seemed obvious to me, as an engineer, and just, that this was the way things should go. And so, I guess you have some form of, belief with some data to back it up that, you're heading in the right direction. I think it's just around, just the wish to do something and you just keep at it, I suppose. And along the way you get signals. Each customer, they said, yeah, you're doing good stuff. What we were working on was interesting. It was having impact. So there's a lot of other smaller signals coming that say, well, yep, okay, you're heading in vaguely the right direction. And I guess you've just got to be persistent. And I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, there wasn't any it was just a belief, a belief in yourself and a belief that it seems like the natural ending point for where the world is going.
Yeah, and I guess in some ways you were getting incremental, I guess, success along the way. You were getting customers, and you had some cash flow, and you know, you're obviously progressing, and your tech is getting better. And understanding, I guess, with one, it's almost like, you know, basketball, one eye on the ball and one eye on the man. You know, so you're obviously doing the business, but you're also seeing, in some sense, I guess, there's this change in the marketplace as it is starting to get a bit of momentum, and there is, you know, Tesla's coming in, and obviously the mining industry and other, you know, corporates, you know, industrials are getting involved. So I guess in some senses you're building that, you're seeing the momentum grow, and you're in a place, you know, you're positioned to be able to access something, but you're just waiting for that aha moment, that tipping point where you actually see that particular gap, and then you just explode, and then you just jump into that. And that sounds like what happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Midway mark.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's great. And so, so there's a couple of more points I want to talk to in this conversation. Just before I do that, just for those of you that are listening, if you've got a question for Paul, please feel free to drop it down in the Q&A section. Either Paul or I will look at it and do that over the next sort of 10 or 15 minutes. But Paul, talk to us a little bit about the landscape, because again, when we're talking about new markets, you know, if you're putting a food product into the food market, that's a little bit easier because the food market's big and it's established. The vehicle market is big and established, but electric vehicles is very new. Still a small fraction. There's this sort of feeling that, well, why don't the big guys do this? Why did it take Tesla to do what they did, you know, to get Volkswagen, you know, and Toyota involved? And in your part of the world, you're doing fast charging. Why wouldn't the petrol browser companies, the guys who make petrol browsers, see this and get into it? You know, tell us about that landscape, the industrial competitor landscape that you're facing.
Yeah. Look, I think there's a few factors at play here. One is just the natural big companies move slowly, no matter how much they want to change. You know, I think they just have there's systems and processes and structure in place that slows them down. And also they you know, again, an element, they won't innovate unless they have to. So I think being big, you know, I think the incumbent sort of industries suffer from that a bit. I think there's a lot more you know, uncertainty in the electric vehicle space because it's particularly disruptive. So it's not just about automotive companies changing their technology. It's about, you know, it brings together, you know, the energy companies of the world and the automotive companies of the world, and, you know, the refueling infrastructure companies. So if you think about big oil and gas, and, you know, all of these. And there's also you know, these are really high tech vehicles as well. So we've got a whole element of, you know, software and technology, and, you know, all that that's coming into play here. And so it's really, you're seeing a lot of big industries overlapping and being disrupted simultaneously. So it's quite difficult to really see with clarity exactly where this is going to land. And I think that's you know, it's difficult to make bold decisions in that type of environment as well. And the market, you know, when we entered, the market was not big. And if a lot of these companies, if they, you know, they need a sort of $30 to $50 million opportunity size before they can really start contemplating, you know, entering, just because they're not geared for these much smaller opportunities. And really, does it matter to them? You know, when it becomes that big, they're a big company with large pockets. They can come and play as well. So you know, I think it's a host of different things that you know, that have influenced this market in that way.
But talk to us about what's happening now, because you've got, at some point there's a tipping point, clearly, it's now big. And it's now got everyone's attention. You know, Tesla was, you know, playing around. Everyone thought, you know, is that going to work? You know, a lot of people have tried electric before, and you know, but at some point it will get to a tipping point where, and I've heard you talk about this, that it just becomes obvious that the vehicles have to go this way, because it's just so much, it's so much better. It's now more cost effective. At some point, the big guys will come in. How are you positioning yourself, from a Tritium point of view? How's Tritium thinking about that journey, and at what point do you think you're likely to either, because at some point you're going to have to make a decision: do we just keep going, and do we just become a big company, or are we going to get bought out by someone?
Yeah.
Where is that? Where are you in that journey?
Further along than we were previously. Look, the answer is I don't really know, and I think the most important thing is that you keep being you want to build a good business that's sustainable, and whether that is, I think if I look industry wide. So taking a step back, in terms of tipping point, I think probably a couple of years ago, we really saw statements coming out of the automotive industry that were making very hard, fixed commitments to electrification. And we see that they're starting to divest and make announcements about divesting, their combustion programs. And so, we see, once we see that change in the electric vehicle industry, everyone else sort of follows behind, because once the cars are available, then everyone can adopt that. And in the future, we're not there yet, we'll see a tipping point where the cost of the vehicles reaches parity with combustion vehicles, and all of a sudden there's no longer a choice. Everyone will just buy electric. In the segments where electric vehicles will dominate, that is. There are other technologies like hydrogen that will play a role. So in terms of tipping points, we've seen something in the past that, I think everyone can now see, it's mainstream. These ideas are mainstream now. And then we'll get mainstream adoption. We're still some way, but, I think it's, within 5 years. I don't think this is a long way off. You ask people, what's the next car that you would like to buy? And most of them will a lot of people will seriously consider electric vehicles. I'm not going to say everyone wants electric vehicles, but that's really the choices that people are starting to have available to them. In terms of industry-wide, and just what we're seeing is we do see increased consolidation in terms of the players and merging and acquisition activity. So in the electric vehicle, in the charging space, we've seen companies like BP and Shell acquire charger manufacturers or charging network operators. We're seeing some of the biggest energy utility companies in in Europe and North America doing similar things. We see the automotive companies start to talk about themselves as energy services company, and companies like Mercedes branching out into energy storage. So not just vehicles. I guess we're seeing a lot of, as the industry grows, we see businesses will partner where it gives them strategic advantages. And, I guess Tritium sits in that mix somewhere.
Yeah. Someone's asked the question, Paul, I think it is. Daniel Commode has asked the question, where do you see the, in terms of this industry developing, this difference between public transport and private transport, because quite often some of the technologies, hydrogen is really only used by public transport and not even in a big way. But do you see there's being a bigger focus on one or the other?
No, but what we will see is faster adoption in the public transport sector. So good. Thank you for your question, Daniel. Good to hear from you. And the reason is that we see cities wanting to be at the forefront, provide thought leadership. There's lots of the biggest cities around the world have made commitments to transitioning their fleet within quite short timeframes, 2025, 2030. To full electric, or low, zero carbon emission, and so we're seeing, for instance, the City of London, none of their new bus contracts are for combustion vehicles. They're all for electric vehicles, and so you'll see very quickly that transition, and I think also the economics of those large vehicles help as well, where you're running a fleet. It has a certain lifetime. You've got operating costs. You can trade all that off in those larger vehicles. Those numbers make sense now, and so again, it's not a big issue to transition to electric. And I think it's a great thing because once people experience these electric vehicles for themselves, then they want to buy them for themselves as well. The struggle we have with passenger vehicles that someone like you or me would buy is that the choice, we don't have as good a choice as we should yet. And if I want a ute, I can't buy an electric ute in Australia right now. I can't walk down to a dealer and do that. And even in other countries, that segment of the vehicle, the vehicle population is not well serviced by electric vehicle options right now. And so that consumer doesn't have a choice. So once we start to get this spread of different vehicles available, then that also, we'll see a lot faster adoption.
Yeah. One thing I really like about that point is when we're looking for who is my first best customer, who are going to be the drivers and innovators, and sometimes in all cases it's about understanding what is the value proposition for the customer, and in some ways contrasting, say, a government, a public, a Brisbane City Council or a London City Council. They can actually extract more value out of a technology and potentially pay a premium because they can extract value, say, at a public community perception level, because they want to be seen as clean green, because that helps them attract, the right people to come and live in the city. Whereas when you and I make a decision, we're actually just looking at, well, how much it's going to cost and how much it's going to cost me to buy capital and what's the running cost. So we're limited to extract value just in terms of the financial value, maybe a bit of credibility if we're trying to impress people. But in reality, a government, or a big mining company can actually, if they're trying to say, quite often I hear, we're doing some work with a big brewing company, and they've made a mandated, I think Kirin, one of the world's biggest brewing companies, and they say, we need to be environmentally sustainable because that's what Kirin is all about. And so all of a sudden, 4X Brewery in Brisbane is interested in talking about, water efficiency programs, because Kirin, the corporate, says it's important for us to be seen as an environmentally responsible company. And so that then drives behavior. And so in some senses, I think trying to find those other, for people who are watching, trying to find a customer that has multiple points of value extraction rather than just the single value proposition that you might offer.
Yeah, I think, and we saw a lot of that in the early days where, people have a use case, not necessarily a business case. And for instance, for our charging stations, the first model that we released is it's a 50 kilowatt charger. It gives that 20-minute fast charge. But really, it's a lot of our customers were operating another business, and they wanted electric vehicle charging to be complementary in some way to the business that they were already running. It was not all customers were just in the business of charging, and selling electrons to drivers, right? That's one business model, but there's so many other ones. And as you say, I think corporates and governments can be really good thought leaders in this space, and that's what you're seeing.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And I think that's a challenge for all of us, is to make sure you find the best customers to partner with that have the most ability to pay and the ability to extract value, which might be ahead of someone who's just going to buy on price, for instance. I think that's a challenge for innovators, to find that customer or that market that actually has an ability and a willingness to extract more value from your value proposition over and above just the dollars and cents. So it sounds like you found that. Paul, talk us a little bit about the business model, because quite often when we're talking about technologies, and you've gone down the hardware line, which is, as Sir Humphrey would say, is very courageous. Hardware is really hard because it's really expensive, the capital costs and all that sort of stuff. In some senses, I wonder whether you might have thought at one point whether we're just going to be a tech company and we will license our stuff to other people who are going to do the hardware, so they take all the risk. Talk to us about the business model you've decided to go down, and the risks and rewards of that approach of going down technology development and hardware development. And I guess there's other ways, because you could potentially go the whole hog and be the delivery and establish charging stations yourself and do the retailing, I guess. at some point you've got to draw the line. But talk to us a little bit about business model and how you came across it and what your current business model is.
Yeah, okay. So look, I think of Tritium as an IoT company. So, we have multitudes of connected devices out there, which are enhanced by a connected network of information and feedback that we provide to our customers who use those devices. So I think at an abstract level, that's really what we're talking about. And so for me, what I see as the disadvantages of being involved on the device side is that you can't move as fast. I mean, that's the big one. You need to physically make products. You need to ship them. If you want to iterate on them, you go through another design cycle. It just is a slower process than something that's developing a piece of software in 3 months and getting revenue from day dot. And then your distribution channels, of course, so your supply chain is much more complex. You need to physically move these devices, around to customers. There's, we're talking about a piece of electrical infrastructure that goes into the ground, and there's installation. There's a lot of considerations there. I think, for us, Tritium has really good technology, and that's one of the reasons why our product was so distinct, and still is in the marketplace, is because there's good technology there that continues to be developed, hardware and software. And I think that the other benefit of going down the hardware route is that it's really more defensible. So for somebody to come up with that technology and develop a product and have it tested with customers, and there's a time lag there. So I think it puts you in it's a more difficult position. It requires more capital to get off the ground, but it has some benefits there from a competitive perspective. So look, the business model is it's really a full business model. It's really about getting chargers in the hands of users and helping to keep those chargers operating well, and providing useful feedback to the customers so they can help, they can run their business in the most efficient way for them.
Yeah. And so, so at some point, so you make the chargers that someone plugs their vehicle into, but there's obviously, commercial charging is a retail environment. So you've got, BP and those guys. Are they your customers? Who are your customers?
Yeah, so our customers are, the petrol chains of the world that are adding charging to their portfolio. Our customers are, energy utilities that want to, supply electricity via chargers to drivers. There are dedicated businesses out there who are in the business of just operating charging networks. They're startups, they're new companies, and that's their core focus. People operating fleets who are transitioning their fleets across to electric vehicles who need charging infrastructure so they can perform business as usual, whatever that is, whether it's cargo, whether it's moving people around. Those are the type of customers that we have. So it's a mix.
Yeah. And so just give us an idea of the global footprint, because you're a Brisbane-based company. You started here, but the world. I'm assuming that there's more electric vehicles per capita in the US and in Europe than there is in Australia. So tell us about that global expansion plans and where you see Tritium going over the next 5 years.
We expanded internationally in terms of physical presence 3 or 4 years ago. So we now have, we have chargers operating in about 40 countries around the world. A lot of them are in Europe and North America. We have locations in Amsterdam and Los Angeles. So we're on 3 continents. We're just not in Australia, and that's really just about, we're a global business. We need to be close to our customers and service them, and we do manufacturing in all of those locations as well. You know, that's I guess that's where we're at the moment. In the future, who knows? But I think you know, we're just this market is really still at the cusp of taking off. I think, you know, global penetration of electric vehicles is you know, single digit percent, right? It's sort of, I'd say it's less than 5%. So there's lots and lots and lots of room for growth. We're not mainstream by or mass market by any stretch of the imagination when it comes to vehicle populations. And so I think the growth in this market is huge, and it's you know, it's again, it's I think there'll be some really, you know, interesting changes to this industry yet to come. You know, when we think about you know, connected vehicles and intelligent transport systems and autonomous vehicles, and the shared, you know, the sharing economy and all these type of disruptive trends that are impacting on this. I think, you know, there's a lot of really interesting times to come, and I'm excited. You know, I can't wait for it to come.
Yeah, and one thing, just almost finally, I think, Paul, is because, and I've heard you talk about this around people thinking not only about electric vehicles as a transport vehicle, but also as an energy transport storage. And you talked about, I think it was Mercedes, I think had looked about being into storage. And, you know, I suspect there's going to be new insights or new opportunities that come up. You know, just talk to us about some of those sort of, you think almost might be left field once you actually get to a critical mass of 10, 20, 30%, and you've got all the charging infrastructure. Is there likely to be, you know, some new opportunities that emerge out of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And this comes back to what you were saying when, for you to buy an electric vehicle, it's just about how much does it cost, you know, and can it do the job I want? You know, how do we get more value out of that? And one of the really interesting things is you know, at Tritium, we talk about unlocking vehicles, not just as transport assets, but also as energy assets. So you have a very large battery that can store more energy than you will use in a typical driving day, much more, you know, two, 3, 4 times as much energy as you actually need that day. What can you do with the rest of that energy storage? And, you know, one of the next, you know, the next waves of interesting applications is what we call vehicle to grid or vehicle to home, where you actually start to pull, you use your vehicle as a battery, you know, battery storage unit, and you can pull that energy out. And so all of a sudden, you know, you can have much more control over how you use your energy, safe for your home. So say you drive to work, the sun's shining, you can buy solar energy at a cheaper rate during the day, and then you drive home. And when it's, you know, it's peak hour for energy prices, and you know, everyone's turning on their appliances, you can actually, you know, plug in your car, reverse the power, you know, switch your home off the grid, and you can power your home off solar, you know, at nighttime, you know, much cheaper than you otherwise would. And so you can save a lot of money. You know, it's a much greener way of operating. And then if you think about when we have millions of cars on our roads, you know, every day, you know, we've got these batteries that are just moving around our cities. And so you've got these big blocks of energy that are moving from one place to another. And how do you capitalize on that? And this is, you know, I think of it as the internet of mobile energy. It's, you know, in the future, do we need to build more poles and wires to transmit energy, or can we just use the road infrastructure as our new electricity grid of the future? You know, it's all these sorts of exciting things that we can do that can help make, you know, when you buy a car, it's less of a money sink for you. It starts to become an asset that works for you. You know, I think all that is yet to come. It's not that far off, and it's, you know, it's going to be very, very powerful.
Yeah, that's awesome, Paul. And I'm just going to share a little word from our sponsor about from UQ, because what's been interesting is that we've seen a lot of interest in people during this COVID disaster. Is people just questioning what are they doing, you know, and is their job secure? And so for those of you that are watching, you know, UQ's put a whole heap of different courses on, professional short courses. We've got some online courses that have reduced them down to basically nothing. We've also got some master's programs, you know, whether you've got an undergraduate degree or even if you've got a lot of experience, whether it's an MBA or we've got a master's of leadership in service innovation. I guess what I'm seeing is this increasing interest in understanding what does the future look like, and recognizing that perhaps the training I did a while ago maybe isn't going to be relevant in the future. So how do I reskill myself? And I think, Paul, you've been really generous in talking about that story. And what I loved how you finished that is just blowing everyone's mind about, well, we thought this was disruption, but maybe there's a much bigger fundamental disruption that's attached to this. And I think part of the job of being an innovator or a disruptor is being in the middle of that disruption and looking for those opportunities. And so that preparation, just waiting for opportunity is very exciting. And while I think, Tritium doesn't have huge operations, obviously market in the Australian market, because we're 10 years behind, 5 years behind everyone else. I mean, it's amazing to have a Brisbane company, and talking to some founders of a Brisbane-based company that's actually in 40 countries around the world. So, I mean, absolutely, congratulations to you, Paul, and to the team and founders and the exec team that's managing and executing a tremendous story. I've just got one last question that's just popped up. Someone's asked, Saul's asked if you're open to direct contact from the audience. So perhaps if you are interested in getting in touch with Paul, I mean, there's not that many people watching, but maybe send myself an email and I can put you in touch with Paul.
Yeah, that's fine. That'd be good.
But yeah, so Paul, look, really appreciate your time today. What I'm really passionate about is how do we embrace change, and how do we accelerate the ability of us to benefit from change, and having a Brisbane-based company as a spearhead in the electric vehicle charging market, and potentially the energy market globally is really exciting. So congratulations on what you've done. Really appreciate your time coming and sharing with us, and look forward to catching up again when we're both in Brisbane. So that'd be great.
No, thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Great. And for those of you that are watching, Leah's just going to put a survey up, which would be really appreciated if you could fill that survey out, which can help us understand what sort of programs we're doing. But have a great day, and enjoy seeing you out in the innovators ecosystem. So thanks, Paul. See you again soon.
Goodbye, everybody.